Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Process. Today, I want to talk about self compassion. Now, I want to talk about self compassion in the context of business, but I also want to talk about it in the context of life. Before I started a business, I had a pretty preconceived idea of what it meant to be an entrepreneur and what it meant to have a business. I never once put the idea of self compassion anywhere close to the concept of business. They were not at all related ideas to me in any shape or form. But now that I am almost a year into this journey, I am becoming more and more convinced that self compassion is one of the most important skills that you can learn. But that's not just for business, that is for life in general. It's crazy to me that this lesson is being taught and that I'm learning this lesson through the lens of business because, again, I just never, ever thought of those two things as being related, but they are. So let's talk about it. I have wanted to start a business for several years, which even in itself is interesting because when I was younger, and I think I've maybe mentioned this before, I used to say I would never start my own business. I have no interest in doing that. I could never see myself as a boss. I just want to be an employee and have a job and do that for the rest of my life. I truly thought that for a long time. I don't think I really understood what business even was at that point. And then it started to transition into, wow, I would really like to do this one day, but it is so beyond what I am currently capable of. And there's just no way I could make it work. I don't have the skills. I don't have the tools. I don't have the know-how to do this right now. So I need to get more years of experience under my belt. And to be fair, I think that at some level that was probably true for me. I don't think it's true for everyone. I do think it was true for me, or was true for me, because that's how it played out. But then it got to the point where I really wanted to do it and I had the experience, and then I was just scared. Then I was just terrified of taking a risk, of putting myself out there, and of potentially making a massive mistake and then having to live with that mistake. So there was a period of time where that was my truth. And then eventually, after I had my daughter and I was on maternity leave, I realized, okay, it's now or never. I'm going to do it now or I'm going to go back to being an employee. And I do not want to do that. So I'm going to take the leap. And over the course of the past year, I have put myself in several situations where I didn't know what I was doing or I messed things up. I made a mistake. I forgot to do something. I wasn't as thorough as I needed to be because I'm learning, because I'm figuring all of this out for the first time. And because I'm doing this on my own for the most part, a lot of it falls on me. Of course, I've got my husband who is helping me immensely with all of the back end stuff for both of the businesses. But still, a lot of it comes down to me learning. And what I have realized is that one of the key parts of learning is self-compassion. If you cannot be compassionate with yourself when you make mistakes, and I say when because it is inevitable. It is inevitable that you are going to make mistakes when you are doing something new. And if you are not compassionate with yourself, you will beat yourself up every single time you do something wrong. And then more than likely, you will eventually get to the place where you give up because you can't handle how much you are beating yourself up and you convince yourself that this is not for you and you are not cut out for this work. You are not cut out for this mission that you have, that you set out to achieve when you first had this business idea. Self-compassion is the ability to look at yourself and to look at your actions with kindness, with openness, with curiosity, being able to separate yourself from the actions that you took, being able to see that you are not your actions, that you can make a mistake and that you still are a good person, that you can forget to do something and still be a good service provider. Self-compassion is being able to hold space for all the parts of you that inevitably come up when you have a business. I think I've said this before, and a lot of entrepreneurs say that business is one of the best and most intense self-development tools out there because it shows every single imperfection. You cannot hide when you are in business because like I said, it all comes back to you. If you are the leader, even if you have a big team, if you are the leader, it all comes back to you. So if you make a mistake, if you don't show up the way that you wanted to, how are you responding in those situations? How are you treating yourself in those situations? Are you being compassionate or are you being very hard on yourself? Because I believe for myself, up until I started this journey, I didn't really have a lot of self-compassion, if any. I was brutal with myself. And to be completely transparent, there are aspects where I am still pretty brutal with myself because I am still learning. I am still early on in this process myself, to be honest. And that's okay. I started doing this work quite a few years ago of really examining my own patterns. But the connection for me of the action and then the self-compassion has really solidified in the last few months. Because when you are constantly putting yourself out there and you are trying new things and you are experimenting with a strategy that you think is going to work and then it completely tanks, if you don't show up for yourself with self-compassion, you are going to beat yourself into the ground. And you are going to struggle to get back up and do it again and again and again. And I am speaking of this in the context of business because this is where it has really come to life for me because I have to be gentle with myself. I have to be compassionate with myself. But this can apply to anything that you are trying, that you are working on getting better at. Maybe it's posting on social media. Maybe that's something that's new for you. And you're not going to get it right every time. And you're going to fall off the wagon. And you're going to forget to post the thing that you thought about, that you said you were going to do. You're going to forget. What's going to happen in those moments? Can you find compassion for yourself? Because you are a human. You make mistakes. Everyone does. You fall off the wagon. Everyone does. You might see on social media that people are incredibly disciplined and they never give up, but they might not share those moments where they struggle. They might not share the parts of their life where maybe they have fallen off the wagon. You probably are only seeing the parts where they are able to persevere and keep it together and put on this persona. There's not a lot of people that are being completely transparent with their shortcomings and with their failures. So if you are comparing yourself to that when you are trying to show up on social media for the first time, or maybe you've tried a few times and you keep falling off the wagon because you can't seem to find that level of consistency, and then instead of being compassionate, you're beating yourself up. If you're comparing yourself to people that are doing it consistently, of course you're going to fall into that pattern. That makes sense. And that's just one example. Maybe you are working on cooking. I use this example a lot because it is another area of my life that is really relevant for me. But I know that there's a lot of people, I hear people say, oh, I'm not good at cooking. I only cook the same 3 things because that's the only things that I know how to cook. Or I always just eat girl dinner because that's easier for me. Where is the self-compassion? Where are you allowing yourself to make mistakes and be okay with it being imperfect, being messy, that you burnt half the meal, but it still tastes decent. But are you being compassionate in those moments? Or are you beating yourself up for having it be anything less than absolute perfection? Because the more that we require ourselves to be held to this impeccable, impossible standard, the less likely we are to actually follow through. Because when we feel like we have to be perfect and we can't be perfect because we're not robots, then we're going to fall off the wagon. We're going to blame ourselves. But the difference with self-compassion is that you can meet yourself where you're at and go, hey, that didn't work out. That was embarrassing. Geez, that did not go the way that I planned. I really thought that was going to go differently, but it didn't. I messed that up. And then be able to follow that sentence with, it's okay. It's all right. I'm actually going to be all right. I'm going to eat my meal. I'm going to go watch TV and I'm going to go to bed. And the world hasn't ended. And I can try again tomorrow. I can do something differently tomorrow. Maybe I spoke to my team about something today and it did not land the way that I wanted it to. Maybe I came across a little bit more aggressive than I wanted to. Is it the end of the world? Have you lost your entire team? Or can you go back to your team? Can you show some compassion for yourself and for your team and go back to them and repair, apologize, take accountability for what happened? And then go, this is what I'm going to commit to doing differently next time. Because this compassion, it shows up not just in your actions with yourself, but also in how you show up with other people. This could be a relationship that you have. Maybe you're a parent who has a toddler. I'm a parent of a toddler, and I know how challenging their behaviors can be. When they scream and yell and have a tantrum, I know how triggering that can feel. And I'm only, 20 months into this journey. So watch me listen back to this in a year and go, oh my gosh, Brooke, you had it so easy. You did not even know what was coming for you. I can acknowledge that. But if you are in that situation where maybe you lost your temper, maybe you didn't respond the way that you wanted to, and you're looking back and going, oh my God, I am the worst mom. Why did I do that? Why did I freak out over that small thing? It didn't even matter. That's one way that you can respond. Another way that you can respond is with compassion, with understanding and awareness of the fact that you had so much going on today. And yeah, maybe you didn't show up the way you wanted to, but that doesn't make you a bad parent. That makes you human. And what you do next is actually going to define, or not even, it's not going to define. You can always change who you are. But what I was going to say is that next step that you take is actually what matters. Do you go back to your child and repair? Do you say, I'm sorry? Do you own up to it? All of these things are the same. So whether you're doing it in a relationship, whether you're doing it with your team, whether you're doing it with yourself, in your business, in a hobby, in a sport, in your job, how can we show more compassion for ourselves when we make a mistake? Because all too often when I speak with women, what I hear is this constant berating of ourselves when we mess up. We are so fast to beat ourselves up and to talk ourselves down and to belittle ourselves for not being perfect. When you take a step back and actually think about this, it makes no sense. Because in what world would you ever expect someone else in your life to be perfect? If I had someone say to me, hey, I really didn't handle that conversation the way that I wanted to. I'm really sorry for what happened. And can we try that again? I would never, ever be like, you are a horrible person. I would say, it happens. It happens to all of us. Of course, no worries. Thank you for apologizing. But let's try again. We don't give ourselves that same grace that we would give someone else. We expect ourselves to be held to this incredibly high standard where but we can look at someone else and see that they're struggling and we can have so much compassion for them. We can say, oh, don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it. I'm here for you. What do you need? Just forget about what we had planned. It's okay. Let's just see if we can get you back on track. How can I help? Imagine if we could say those exact same words to ourselves when we mess up, when we don't show up, when we don't follow through with the thing that we said we were going to do. Because it will happen. But how you respond changes everything. And again, coming back to how I am learning this lesson, which is through business, I never, ever would have thought that this would be the way that I would learn this lesson. But as I am stepping out of my comfort zone every single day and pushing myself into a realm that I previously never thought possible for myself, I am realizing that if I don't have compassion for myself, I'm not going to be able to do it, because I will push those parts of myself down to where I actually can't have the identity shift that I need to have in order to become the next level of a business owner, the next level of a CEO that I need to step into. If I am pushing those parts of myself down and ignoring them and talking down to them and just being generally really unkind to myself, I am not allowing myself to accept all the parts of me and to go, hey, I hear you. I hear that this mistake really feels challenging for you right now. But here's what we're going to do about it, because we can't change the fact that it already happened, but we can move forward and do something different. And compassion is a huge part of that, because if you're not willing to be compassionate with yourself, you're probably not willing to be honest with yourself about what's actually going on for you. And the more that we can be honest with ourselves and bring those things out of our subconscious and into our conscious awareness, then we can start to look at ourselves with clarity and go, hey, I see you. I see how challenging this is for you. I see that this is a story you have been carrying for 20 plus years of your life. Holy shit, that is heavy. That is so heavy. Now let's think about what that story is doing for us. Is it still serving us? And what can we start to do differently to interrupt that pattern? But all of that comes from self-compassion. All of that comes from being able to hold space for the parts of you that feel less than, that feel like they aren't worthy. You have to have compassion. You have to be able to see yourself for who you are and recognize that you are incredible, even with all of your mistakes, even with all of your shortcomings, even with all of the things that make you feel like you are not worthy of whatever it is that you are chasing, but whatever it is that you are searching for, that you are hoping for, that you are dreaming of. You are worthy of it. But the only way to get to it is by acknowledging that all of these parts of you are parts of you. And that as we start to acknowledge those parts, we can start to shift those parts. We can start to take different actions. We can start to build new evidence that those old parts don't have to be our reality anymore. But you can't get to the new without acknowledging the old. You can't let go of it without first acknowledging it. And in order to acknowledge it fully, you have to be compassionate. So that's what I have for you today. How can you be more compassionate in your life? That's what I'll leave you with, actually. Is there an area of your life that you can notice where you are currently being incredibly hard on yourself? And how can you shift that into more compassion? Whether that's in your business venture, whether that's in a relationship that you have, whether that's in a hobby that you are trying to get into, whether that's in a habit that you've been trying to break for years. Whatever it is, how can you show yourself a little bit more compassion today? All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you more than you know. If you have any thoughts, if this resonated, I would love to hear from you. You can send me a message on Instagram. You can leave a comment on this YouTube video. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. I hope you're having an amazing day. I hope the rest of your day is absolutely incredible. And I cannot wait to see you in the next one.